Hey, Caleb here. Just a quick note before we get into the episode. There were some technical difficulties. No video this week, unfortunately. Both Scott and Craig just had some issues with their video. But nevertheless, audio is good to go. There is going to be a little bit of an awkward edit at some point in the early part of this video, or this podcast, sorry, because my phone cut out and like hung up on the call. But we got everything back on track, so no worries there. And yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. Go check out the new Junko Daydream EP, We Make an Idol of Our Fears. It's awesome. It's fucking amazing. And I really love this episode, so hopefully you enjoy it as well. Tell your friends, subscribe. If you're not listening, if you haven't subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcasts, please do. It would really mean a lot to us. Craig and I got a lot of things cooking with this. And including a few sort of like more focused, shorter episodes, just kind of on living life in the music industry. But anyway, here you go. Here's Scott from Junko Daydream.
Don't worry about stealing gas, because we'll just siphon again and then put it in someone else's car.
I got a shirt from the band. The days off the shirt, you got a boot print on it. It won't come off.
We might listen.
Cool.
We should jam sometime. We're here with Scott from Junko Daydream. What's up, buddy? How you holding up with this whole thing?
I mean, about as well as I can. I've learned a lot of theory, not being able to play any shows, and
Yeah, you guys are supposed to like be like just off tour, right? Like you're supposed to be finishing up a tour like last week or something.
Yeah, we're supposed to be playing with Girth from Toronto for like most of the month of March and April.
Right.
And,
yeah, there's like pretty much this whole like when this got really bad, it was like that was when your tour was.
yeah, exactly. And we hadn't even played this year yet at all. I think our last show was with Single Mothers in Windsor in December.
Right.
So we were really itching to get back at it, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That London show was supposed to be here at my place at the Dome.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I mean, like all house shows. I mean, all shows are off, right? But it's like we were considering it. It's just like, well, like I mean, we could have. It's like you can have like. They're saying no gatherings of like what was like 15 people, and it's like, well, I mean, we can get over like. We can get like 30 people in here and it won't be a big deal or whatever. Like we can get some healthy people in here. And then it got to the point where it's like, yeah, no gatherings of 5 or less. And we're like, okay, we can't really keep having house shows at this point.
Yeah.
Like even if it was just house shows, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a great situation, but I think it's good that everyone's sort of doing their part and respecting what's going on.
Yeah.
Like one of the shows we were supposed to play was at Piranha Bar in Montreal. And I was talking with the promoter about that. Like as soon as stuff started to surface, before they even closed down anything, and I'm like, do you still want to do this? And he's like, oh yeah, it's great, man. People want shows. And then, people started getting cases and they started putting restrictions on things. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, oh yeah, like still going to do it. The numbers are good. Like all the bands want to play it. And then,
right.
And then they actually banned like bars and venues from being opened. And I said, okay, so like, do you want me to change the event page or are you going to handle that? And he's like, well, technically Piranha Bar doesn't classify as either of those things and they still want to do it. I'm like, no, that would look terrible. Dude. The optics on that would be bad. And like, no one wants to be that band that tried to sneak around the rules and play a show during a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. No kidding.
Well, in Lost Arts, you guys played a show like the day before or something like that, right? Before the stay-at-home order.
Yeah, it was pretty much like that was like the last Friday before. It was kind of like, is this serious? Like some people were still freaking out, but then it like wasn't like the magnitude hadn't quite hit like Canada yet.
Right.
And then like that Monday, it was like, no, this is real, and everybody should stay the fuck home.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, true, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're supposed to play a show like in a couple of weeks at Call the Office, and obviously that's been moved and postponed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really strange time.
It's
for sure.
The landscape's going to be totally different when this is all over, and I mean, like Craig, you and I were talking yesterday. You lost out on more shows than either of us.
Well, yeah, Heart Attack Kids were supposed to do it was like 20 something dates, but I know it was Ontario, Quebec, and then we were supposed to stop into the States for the first time. Like that was gonna be the first time I'd ever been to the States anyway, and we were really excited about it. We had our visas all in place and everything, and then we had the stay-at-home order came out, and we were all saying like, so what do you think is gonna happen with all these shows? Like, are they being canceled? Are they being postponed? And it seems like they're being postponed until at least October. But I mean, like just the other day, Trudeau was saying that he thinks this is gonna last at least a year. So, I mean, who's to say when these are even going to be rescheduled?
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, it's...
Right? Like, how can you even make plans right now?
You can't. And, I mean, it's going to... And I think there's going to be a big bottleneck of shows once everything does open back up because of everyone trying to get all of their shows that were spread out over the entirety of the time that this pandemic's happening. They're all going to be trying to reschedule it into, like, the first month or two that you can actually play again, and there's just going to be such a crowded scene. You know, I feel like it's not going to be good. It's not.
Yeah, that was my prediction the other day. I was saying, are we going to have, like, everyone's going to say, well, yeah, you don't need to be staying at home anymore, and there's going to be a ton of shows like every day of the week, and they're all going to pop off, or is it going to be, you know, everyone's going to start booking these shows and people are still going to be afraid to go out, or they're not even going to want to go out? Like, what's going to happen when everyone comes back, right?
Precisely, man. And then, I mean, even if people do want to go out and see all these shows, you know, there's going to be so many more shows to compete with that, you know, people that you might normally draw to your show might have another 2 or 3 shows that night that they could go to.
Right.
So... I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the scene sort of works its way through it. You know, I think people really need to coordinate and try and work together to bring it back.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be a cooperative effort for sure to make sure everyone at least in the entertainment industry, we can get back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think for smaller bands, like even, you know, like my band, I don't think we're probably top of the list for a lot of people to come see if we're competing against other shows in the city or whatever that night. And like that's who it's gonna definitely hurt, are like these smaller bands that are trying to promote like a new single or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I could go see you, but there's like this other wicked show at Rum Runners tonight, or there's like a music hall show, because, you know, there's legit bands that are touring the world that have to get rescheduled as well, right?
Right.
So that's what's going to be interesting.
I got a message the other day. Someone was saying, like, what's going to happen with the My Chemical Romance show? And like, that's a good question. You know, like these big show, like these huge shows where like millions of dollars of tickets, you know, like huge budgets for these massive arenas. Like, what happens? Like, that's got to be a meltdown for some management lady, right? Trying to like refund or like console like 10,000 people that are like, what about my $150 ticket? You know?
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, man. I was reading an article the other day about how, you know, Ticketmaster and Live Nation, they're instituting a pretty airtight policy where unless it's actually canceled and not rescheduled, they're not going to do refunds.
Right. Yeah, and everyone's getting, you know, everyone's getting government money at this point. It's like, yeah, that $200 could really come in handy right now.
Oh,
yeah.
100%.
And that's like everything that up in the air, so it's like, well, yeah, it's likely postponed. And it's like, okay, well, till when? Like, we don't know. Like,
Right.
okay. So you like really have to, I think, just be responsible for yourself and like just keep track of like, hey, I paid this like $200 for this ticket, and like the show has never been rescheduled or anything. Like, it's going to just kind of be upon the person that bought the ticket, I think.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The main thing I'm concerned about is just like, what's the landscape of venues going to be when we get out of this?
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
for real. Like, who's gonna stand the test of time and be able to pay the rent? You know, like, is Call the Office gonna be cool? Is, you know, I mean, like all the small hole in the wall venues. I know there's lots like further north, and like Toronto's got a million small venues that like, are they gonna be able to keep up?
I don't know. There's so many of them that were barely making ends meet to begin with.
Right.
And then, you know, this comes in, and I mean, it's tough for bars to get the loans that the governments are giving. And even then, they might not even be able to pay those when they can actually open back up and do shows again. So,
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure. We were talking to like Call the Office when we were doing that show just before this all really popped off, and I think they said something like every time somebody cancels a show, it's like $1,000 or something for the bar
really?
that they lose. Yeah, something like that's what Nick was telling me, and I was like, "That's fucking crazy."
Yeah, it's
and
harsh.
and Call the Office was doing a lot. Like we did our music video there, and we were talking to Vanessa, and like they're really putting like a lot of work into that place and trying to like revive it.
Yeah, Call the
And
Office
this
has
is
been
really
looking great.
like worst case scenario. Yeah, and yeah, they've been like really working hard on trying to like renovate it and make it like an actual building again.
Right.
And this is really shitty timing for this to happen because
Yeah, they've got all this
they were
money
looking
sunken
for
into it.
loans and stuff, and and now they can't do anything. They can't use it.
Yeah, it's. I hope they make it through it because I mean, just from back when we were playing, around in high school, we've lost like 6 or 8 different venues over
for
the
sure.
years, and I mean,
For
Call the
sure.
Office,
APK,
both
APK,
APKs.
Norma Jeans. What are some other ones? The Shire. The Shire got bulldozed, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, evac as well.
Evac.
yeah,
Oh my
Evac.
God. What a throwback. That place went through hell
Yeah,
like several times.
yeah, yeah, man. And so now it's just Call the Office and Rum Runners in the music hall, and that's it. I mean, like, there's no one else really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, like, as far as we're, like, I mean, I live at a house venue, right? So, I mean, for us, like, in my standpoint is, like, when everyone's allowed to come back, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, like, you don't have to stay at home, I would definitely still be nervous to do a show. And I mean, first off, the pull, like, would it be too many people are going to show up to this house venue? Are we going to have nobody show up? But also, what if someone shows up and gets sick, and then all of a sudden we have, like, like, as soon as everything's getting better, suddenly we're the one that we're COVID ground zero all of a sudden again.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're talking about this happening in phases. Like we should be expecting to go back to normal life and then having another wave of this.
For sure,
So-
because they're gonna say, I'm fine, everyone's fine, go back to your regular lives, and then there's gonna be one guy that touches a bus pole or whatever.
Okay. Sorry about that. That was my bad. So we were talking about venues like kind of closing and stuff. What I did want to ask Scott was kind of with this whole touring thing not an option, and you guys are putting out an EP in May. What's kind of the promo plan? Because you guys tour a lot, and with that kind of off the table, I was wondering how that changed your planning a little bit in terms of promoting this thing.
It's a good question, man. Like, we're sort of playing it by ear because playing live shows are a huge part of what we do. So, in terms of how we plan to support it, we're really trying to increase our social media presence and get it out to as many online publications as we could.
Right.
And, just sort of do more writing and have more material ready to go so we can support it
Right.
in the way that we usually do. Once we're able to play shows again, we can hit the road as hard as we can.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, supporting it with the shows is going to be pretty crucial for, selling it. But, I think, I was saying on a previous podcast, I think a lot of people are going to be more inclined to be buying music online, like, during this time. I think people kind of get it, especially with musicians. I feel like visual artists are going to kind of take a hit. That's going to be kind of difficult. I really do hope that people keep putting out music, and I think I just wanted to basically say bravo for putting out some tunes in this time. So I think it's really important that people continue to put out music while this is happening. Like, people want some fresh stuff to listen to and to do. Even with just this podcast, people are saying hey, it's great that you guys are doing this as some sort of fresh thing I can check out every day.
Oh,
So
100%, dude.
I think it's great that you guys are putting it out. And it's May 1st is when it's coming out.
Yeah, May 1st. It was a tough decision because, when this really hit, we had to sit down and say, well, do we still want to release this? we're not going to be able to support it at all. But at the end of the day, we sort of decided, like, it's been a good year and a half at least since we released our first EP. And, we figured we just needed something new, and we do it the best we can. And there are, like you said, advantages to releasing things during this time. People are probably a bit more receptive to receiving new material. They might take time that they might not necessarily have otherwise, if things were normal, and maybe check out a band that they didn't know of before. So I mean, we're doing what we can to support it, and I feel like we did a pretty decent job of that, and hopefully people like it, because it is quite a bit different than our first EP.
Right. I saw the clip that you guys put out today, and it sounds fantastic.
I'll send it your way. I'll send it both your ways, actually.
I would love to hear it. We're getting the exclusive, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, this like preview clip you put out today for the single is awesome. Who put that together? Did you guys just do that, or did you hire somebody to put that together?
We hired a guy named Stephen Frost to put together the lyric video that's from, and then we got Alex to use his MIA education to hack together a couple teaser clips for it.
Excellent.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
and a quick shout to Kyle Ashbourne, who recorded you, correct?
Correct. Yeah, Kyle recorded us. We got it mastered by Dan Broadbeck. Both of them did a phenomenal job. It packs a lot of punch. It's got a nice sort of energy to it that we're really, really excited about.
Sweet.
Yeah, Kyle's awesome, especially with like I revisited the last podcast we did together, and we were talking about how like this is perfect for Kyle to work on. I think this is like really the kind of music that he shines in. He mixed our last two singles too, and I was really happy with what the outcome of that was.
Kyle's incredible.
He really kills it. Yeah, he knows what's up for sure.
Yeah, like, and a lot, like, none of us really have a lot of technical background in terms of recording, except for maybe Alex. So when Kyle's asking us what we want, we can go in and we can say, like, we want it to like kick you in the throat. We want it to hit your ears. Yeah. We just want it to like just destroy you and destroy your ears. And he's like, okay, cool, I know exactly what you mean. And then he's able to deliver on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, it's great. He's great to work with too. And I mean, you combine his personal skills with the talent he has for recording and engineering, and it's just a really good experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. He did a fantastic job on the Mesa EP. I love that album.
That album sounds huge.
Oh my God, it sounds massive, dude. I wanted to ask you, Scott. So with because I know you guys play, Junko Daydream plays outside of London way more than in London. You guys are usually on the road. And I mean, with this whole quarantine thing, who knows when we're all going to be back out playing shows, but I'm curious, granted that we're all going out and touring again and playing shows in general, are you going to be trying to play some more stuff here in London, or are you going to still be like on your world conquest, trying to go around and play outside wherever you can?
Sorry, conquest is a great word for it.
Right.
I like that. I think we're gonna try and play here a bit more frequently, but it's not like we don't play London because we don't want to play London. We just don't want to tire people out in our hometown.
Right. I think that's super important.
Like every time we play London, we get a really strong reception and a really good turnout, and we don't want to oversaturate. We don't want to oversaturate our shows in the city.
Definitely.
And play here too often, because then you end up with a situation like, oh, we're going to check them out this week. Oh no, they're playing another 3 weeks from now at 765.
Yeah.
So
I've preached that like all the time, and it's a very fine line with certain artists too, right? Like I know Heart Attack Kids are the same way. But before I joined, they'd usually play Call the Office, and it'd be like once a year. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of our plan still, is we're like, you play one or two huge hometown shows or whatever. But I mean, there's some artists that, like you can play like a different cafe every day of the week, you know, and you can get away with it, and people are still going to come out every time. But it's such a strange, like, I don't know what the determining factor is for whether you can play once a month in London or once a year, and it won't hurt your draw.
I guess it's just all about finding that balance, you know. And I feel like the heavier your music is, or the more niche it is, the less frequently you can really play
right
in your city, you know. And it's also like, what's predominant in your scene, you know. Back when we were doing Radio Caroline, it was all hardcore music that was going on in London. Like every show was a hardcore
we played
show
with exclusively hardcore bands. And
now that I'm playing in a hardcore band, it's not, I mean, there's still a lot of great hardcore bands in London, but I mean, it's the hardcore scene in London isn't as prominent as it used to be.
Right.
So, you know, when you do toss a hardcore show, we just want to make it count, which is why we only do London, you know, once or twice or 3 times a year.
Right.
Why Radio Caroline only plays London once every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Look out for us, November of 2022. I had to think about it for a second there. That was a great show, by the way. I have to toot our own horns. That was a fantastic time.
I don't think it could have gone any better than it did. I was really, really happy with that.
Tons of fun.
Really good time.
Yeah. It was awesome.
And I know we're all itching to do it again sometime, but I mean, Liam is off in fucking New Zealand, and he's there for the lockdown.
Is he actually? I thought he came
he's
back.
He's there, yeah. It's crazy. So Liam, the drummer for Radio Caroline, drummer for DIY Orchestra as well, fantastic musician, and like one of my best friends. He flew off to New Zealand for like, it's almost like mission work, like missionary work, but not religious. He's just there working farms. He's just working farms for meals and a place to stay or whatever. And he'd been there for like 2 months. And then this all happened, and I finally thought to message him because I was like, of course he's gonna come home, but then I didn't hear anything about it, and then I was just like, are you coming back to Canada for the quarantine, or are you staying in New Zealand? He said, no, I'm gonna rough it out here, and I'm like, oh yeah, rough it out. It's like summertime there. It's like paradise, right? And I'm like, rough it out. And so he's just living it up in a hostel right now, and I think they've got like 2 cases or something. I'm probably drastically underestimating that, but New Zealand, it seems like it's not as huge of a spread. Like there's not as many cases and stuff. So it's like, as long as they all stay put, they're fine. So it's like, oh yeah, why don't you just go hang out with some fucking koalas or whatever? I don't know. I don't know what wildlife's in New Zealand, but it seems like he's having a good time still.
Sort of jealous.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wouldn't mind roughing this out in New Zealand.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Let's fly down there, and well, I guess we can't fly anywhere.
No.
It was like I had stars in my eyes for a second there. It's like, oh yeah, wait, no shows.
Oh my god.
But I mean, what are you guys doing to keep busy in the lockdown? You know, like what's Lost Arts and what's Heart Attack Kids doing to keep busy?
Oh man, we're not doing much. We can't really obviously we can't really jam. We finally got a music video that we put together in March. We finally got a draft back for that. So now it's just working on promo for that for whenever that's going to come out. But It's been such a bummer not being able to play together or anything. Cause we were really starting to we had our eyes set on the studio and we were putting demos together. And then this happened and we're like, oh, what now? And Nick's about to move back home. So we don't really have a plan for, when this is all over, where are we going to be practicing and what's the plan after this? So
right.
It's really going to be a regroup. And we finally felt like we were we finally found the path. We finally found our lane. Mm-hmm. And now we have to totally regroup whenever we're allowed to, see our friends again.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I get
kind
that.
of a bummer.
We put together a whole 12-month plan. We had everything in place, where we were going to do shows, where we were going to tour, what we were going to record this year. It's just all out the window.
Yeah. We for the first time in January we got together and I was like, all right guys, last year was okay, but we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. Let's set some goals. And we everybody was it was so good. I felt it was the best I've ever felt about the band. And I was like, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good year, I think.
Yeah.
And then some dude ate a bat and was like, fuck you and any plans you've made for this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Heart Attack Kids are the same way. Everything's basically. It seems like every band. It's just everything's kind of come to a screeching halt, right? But I mean, thankfully, it seems like a lot of the musicians we've been talking to on this podcast, and anybody that I've been talking to, seems to kind of have some content in the bank, which is great. And like I said, I really hope that people are still putting out stuff while this is going on, because I think it's really important. Like, and it'll get some good reach. Like, what other excuse do people have to not listen to your music, right? If they're all just sitting at home.
100%, man.
But like we've been working away at. We've got 2 singles in the bank, and we've got a video that we're working on. We don't have any release dates for anything, because I mean we're all staying at home. Jared and I still live in London together. Laura's in Nova Scotia. So, I mean, our jam dynamic has stayed the same, aside from Jared and I not getting together. But, you know, we still keep sending each other demos, and like we're writing a little bit. But, I mean, we're all kind of doing our respective thing because, you know, there's, you know, unemployment's going on, and everyone's stuck at home. No one's feeling very, fuck yeah, let's write a rock and roll song all the time. Right? So everyone's kind of hanging out, and we're picking away at things, but we still got content going. So it's I'm really glad to hear that a lot of people still have content in the bank they're still working on.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it always keeps things fresh. You know, if there's nothing new going on in a life that's already stagnant because of this lockdown,
right?
You know, it serves a huge purpose for just, you know, keeping people engaged and realizing that there's life outside of this.
Mm-hmm. And Cam made a good point on a previous podcast of he thinks like it kind of tied into something that I said too, where with everyone staying inside, there's going to be like this new era of renaissance where there's going to be all this new material that people put out either after the quarantine or like while they're in quarantine, they'll be creating all this art. But I'm curious as to how people's sounds are going to change while they're all stuck up in here. I mean, like I know for sure, like I've been doing these live streams, and I've definitely rediscovered my love for acoustic music and like blues stuff, right? So it's gonna be interesting to see, you know, say 6 months down the road when Junko Daydream gets together for a jam. Are you guys gonna be a country band or something like that, you think?
I'd love to see an emo revival, the late 2020
I would love
emo
that
revival.
too. Yeah, 100%. I ship that.
I mean, it's the perfect conditions for it. You know, all you have to do, like all you have is to, you know, reflect on your anxiety and your sadness and your depression and all the negative things. You have all the time in the world to think about them. So I feel like there's some really
right
great emo music coming out of this.
Right. I hope that there's still going to be some bubbly, you know, acoustic music coming out, or some bedroom pop that's like, hey, you know, everything's not that bad. That would be good too. I'd like a nice mix. You know, I want my 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, and I want my Colby Calais at the same time. I want both.
You need the juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly. You need some bubblegum pop to balance out the crippling sadness from the upcoming Junko Daydream album.
That's just like punching walls music, you know. That's the soundtrack to a fight club. So
right.
We're on the extreme end of the angry spectrum on that one. It's pretty hard the entire way through.
Nice. I'm very excited to hear it.
But I mean, like you were talking about the juxtaposition there, though. Our next release that we had planned is much lighter, more dynamic material. So I mean, our next release will be drastically different than this, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out across the industry. Just seeing how, if any bands have a complete sort of sonic shift, into an entirely different genre.
I'm predicting it. I think it's going to happen because I mean, it's happening with me for sure. As far as what I'm playing for most of the day, or like most days, I'll be picking up my acoustic guitar before I pick up my bass. You know what I mean? And I mean, I've seen a lot of people are still producing tons of stuff, and I wonder if there's going to be, you know, more of a shift to like electronic stuff for a lot of musicians, because it's just they have their laptop, they can't really plug in a stack in their bedroom kind of thing. But I know like Mark Swan, we had him on a previous episode, and I mean he put out an entire EP. Like in the time that he was in quarantine, he wrote, produced, and released an EP, and it's I mean that's a bit of a mixed bag EP too, but I mean, you know, People are going to be stuck up with nothing better to do. They're going to have time to reflect on their sound and put it out.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of good that can come out of it musically.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the market to which you can then release and support the music that's going to be changing, right?
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So buy
Scott,
music, people. Buy it all.
Yeah.
Buy all the albums.
I gotta ask you, Scott. I know it's not an option right now, but did you guys make any more moves on doing that Denny's tour at all?
Oh, we've talked about it like extensively, just about actually like renting out space at Denny's, because it's right along the 401 the entire way, so it'd be the easiest tour ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Sleep in the parking lot, shower in the trucker showers. Like, it would be so streamlined, and I feel like people would actually go. Like, would you guys go to
100%.
a Denny's hardcore show?
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
I would sell merch for you. 100%. I would do that. I would do that just for eating Denny's every day.
Yeah. And you bring like a documentary crew with you, and like, so then you got footage. For
Oh, dude, we'll
afterwards.
do it. We'll be a mobile podcast the whole time.
Make a whole mini doc? Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it. We haven't actually made any calls to Denny's to see if we could even remotely organize it. But, once this clears up, that might be a good thing for us to look into doing, because I feel like people would really enjoy that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
thank
for
God
sure.
it wasn't in plans, because, I mean, first off, tours are next. But, I mean, restaurants, no-go.
Yeah.
Big no-go. Like, that would
Yeah.
be devastating to have a full... Like, if you actually had booked the entire tour of Denny's, and then it's like, hey, all restaurants are closed down. It's like, ah, shit. Well, at least we can reschedule the tour. Hey, all tours are closed down. Ah, shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Just kicking you while you're already down.
Yeah.
But, once this all clears up, I'm sure they're going to really need to increase their overhead pretty quick, so they might be more lenient on what sort of bookings they take. So,
Oh, true.
You heard it first, guys. Right
There
here.
you go.
Denny's tour,
Yeah.
Junko Daydream 2023.
if anyone else steals this idea, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. Well, we got 2 podcasts now where we've talked about it, so like, I think it's pretty clear that it was a Junko idea.
Yeah. We're speaking it into
Yeah.
the universe. One
Yeah,
podcast
so-
at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
we'll bring you guys along as well. Lost Arts,
Oh, for
Junko
sure.
Daydream, Heart Attack
And
Kids. If you
Heart
guys
Attack
wanted
Kids,
to play Denny's,
Dude.
yeah.
Yeah, for real. This is going to be
Dude,
the ultimate
that's the-
tour package.
that's the-
This is going to be
yeah,
the
that-
Grand Slam. the Grand Slam tour package.
Yeah. It's the tour to end all tours for sure.
I could
Oh my
totally
God.
see the tour poster too being laid up like the Denny's menu with the Grand Slam.
Mhm.
And,
Oh.
there's just so much you can do
100%.
with it.
Yeah, it's so marketable.
Oh yeah, and as well, if Denny's didn't want to do it, I'm sure we could book the Huskies that are all down the 401 and the 400.
Yeah, or like we could probably get some IHOPs, or like you go down to the States, hit every Waffle House on the East
Yeah.
Coast.
Oh, dude.
I mean,
Fuck yeah.
you'd be
Just
stopping every 10 minutes though, if we were
Yeah.
going all the way down.
We'd be doing a lot of matinees, guys.
Yeah. You got 3 dates in one city. Just Oh man.
That'd be
Yeah,
even
what
more.
else? What else you guys want to talk about? I thought it was we played with your buddies in Big Vein last summer when we played a show in Montreal.
Oh yeah.
Like the first thing they asked us, they were like, "Oh, you guys are from London? You guys know Junko Daydream?" I was like, "Yeah, we do actually." Like those guys are sick.
Yeah, I mean they're all pretty good dudes. I really like those guys. We played with them twice, and I can't say that I've talked to them recently, but it's just like they've been doing a lot of, like they do a lot of shows in Montreal. So every time that we come back, it's like, all right, when was the last time these guys played? 2 days ago, and
Yeah.
they're playing again tomorrow.
Yeah, same venue.
Yeah.
But they're all
It
really
was,
good guys, and they have a lot of really cool energy.
For sure. It was crazy. They were playing, and they're just like this, straight up like punk rock band for anybody that doesn't know. And we're like, are they doing like a punk rock cover of the Macarena? And they were. It was awesome.
My God, dude, that's so sick. What the hell?
It was
Dude,
awesome.
it's like a staple of their shows.
Yeah, it was
Holy
amazing.
shit.
I couldn't believe it. But yeah, that was quite the venue. We played at the Barfly, and we're like, oh, there's like no stage here really. But it was definitely like one of the most punk rock things I've ever been involved in, just being in that venue.
Right. Level playing field. How do you feel about no stage in a venue?
Oh, it's weird.
It is.
I
It
mean, like
is weird.
there's technically a stage at that place, but there's like once you get a drum kit set up, it's pretty much you're at a real estate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but like we played at the Harmony Lunch a few times, and that's just on the floor, or like the Doors, obviously.
Yeah.
No stage there. It's weird. I don't know how I really feel about it.
It definitely took longer than usual, at least for me, to feel comfortable playing at Harmony because there was no stage.
Yes.
Or like no illusion of a stage, you know? Like, yeah, most of the places that we play, there's technically a stage, but at the end of the day, only, one or two members is on it because everyone else has to be on the floor because the stage is so small. But like
Right.
not even having that sort of thing, it does feel weird, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if the energy of the show's good,
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
for
will
sure.
say
Like-
that I've like damaged more gear at shows without any sort of a stage than the other shows.
100%. Yeah, because you're so interactive with the audience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
generally, Junko Daydream is so interactive with the audience too. But I mean, when you have no stage, like even when we were playing at Radio Caroline, right? Like you'd wind up, you're bumping elbows with people in the pit, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one of those, I find like playing shows like that, and then it's almost a very similar thing if then you play, something like legit like Rum Runners, where both of those things both feel like very real. Where, if you're playing like a decent Doors show and there's no stage and you're like, this still feels cool, and like it feels like, it's like very punk rock, but it feels like you're cutting your teeth, where, when you're on Rum Runners, it's like, this is an actual venue and I'm on a real stage and
Right.
there's like a sound guy.
I can move
it's
around
kind of like
without having
both
to
ends of the
worry about
spectrum.
falling off the stage.
Yeah.
exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
It's cool. I think it's the variety that makes gigging so addictive, though. Is like when you walk in, it's never the same thing twice.
Right.
I mean,
No.
even if you're revisiting a venue that you played 6 months earlier, most of the time they've either changed the stage, removed the stage, changed their setup completely. The variety is, I think, what keeps it interesting.
Unless you're playing at Lee's Palace, then it's the same every time.
Jesus. Oh, man.
Dude, that place was looking rough when we played there.
It
looking
is.
pretty rough.
And it's still leaking piss from the ceiling.
That's insane. That's insane. That's actually a great story. We gotta recant that. When we were in Radio Caroline together, we booked a gig at Lee's Palace, and we were all so stoked about it. I was stoked about it because it's like the Scott Pilgrim venue, right? And we got closer and closer to it. I forget, like, because we must have had it booked like several months in advance, right?
We had it booked a long time in advance.
Yeah, because it was far enough in advance that the Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight was announced after, and it was on
Oh,
the
wow.
same fucking day,
Oh,
the same day as Fight Night, the biggest sporting event like in
Ever.
decades, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we played for all bands and the sound guy that night at Lee's Palace.
Oh no.
Yeah, man. It was. I don't think I've ever seen Toronto that quiet either. Like, you step outside the venue and there was nobody anywhere.
No.
Wow.
And I think we had a bit of false hope too, because there was some sort of Frosh Week thing going on, and there were
Oh,
literally
man.
like hundreds of university students coming
Right
into
above
Lee's
us.
Palace. And they're like, oh, yeah, man, we're going to catch your show. And we're like, oh, sick. And then they went to an entirely different section of the venue, and we still played to nobody.
They were upstairs, and I'd gotten into the full flower suit, and I was soliciting myself at the door. I was like,
Yeah.
"Come see the band," and I'm like trying to look all weird and fucking flower suity, and I'm like, "You gotta come see the show." They're like, "Where are you guys from?" I'm like, "London," and they're like, "England," and I'm like, "Yes." I'm like,
Yeah.
suddenly I have to like try to put on a fucking accent or something, but no, none of those kids wanted to go. They just wanted to grind on each other and get too hammered.
I mean, the upside of the whole thing was we were able to pack up and reload the van quick enough that we actually got to like watch the fight on your phone on the trunk of a car. We got to see like the last 2 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember earlier that day we were like trying to figure out where we could still place 50-1 bets. And we just couldn't do it.
We were trying to make so much money that day and it didn't happen. Actually, I've got one more and I want you to tell it. How about that time we played in Brantford and hit the casino after?
Oh, okay. All right. So so we get asked to play the show in Brantford at Club NV. And we ended up getting talked into bringing the entire back line for the show. Like, we were the only out-of-town band, and we brought the entire back line. And the whole setup there was super, super rickety in the sense that, like, there were extension cords plugged into extension cords. Plugged into even more extension cords, and that's how you set up your stuff for the show.
Love it.
So we play our set, we do the show. The promoter for the show offered us like something insulting, like $20. And
yeah, it was not good.
We were like, we made this thing happen. This is literally all of our gear that was used for this show. You got to do better than that. And I think he ended up giving us like $70 total.
Yeah, I think it was $70 or $80.
We were just pissed. We were super pissed just at how the night went in general. So we decided, let's have some fun. Let's take all of the money that we got paid for this show, go to the casino, and bet it all on one round of roulette. So we went to the
How did that go, Scott?
Okay, so I don't even think you could go in, could you? Because you weren't old enough.
I couldn't go in. I was 18 still, and I wasn't even allowed in the casino. So I was standing out there like, this is fucking stupid. Just pouting. I was so upset because I wasn't allowed in the casino. And like we drove out there. It wasn't a very well-attended show either. Right?
No.
And I think Il Scarlet had played the night before on the big stage in the back. So I was like, we walked in and I was like, oh shit, this stage is great. And they're like, nah, you're playing the front room, man. And I'm like, what? And I could go out there, and it was like level playing field with like a fucking fence around the stage. So like I was.
Those
bummed,
are the worst
like,
types of stages. Having the fence around it.
Yeah, I hate it. Like Star Billiards had one of those, and like I didn't mind it when I was doing the acoustic things, but anytime we had a band, they would always insist on playing on the floor instead because the cage is just such a an energy killer.
It is. So
yeah, I was pouting already, and then we got to the casino, and I wasn't even allowed in.
So Jeff and I go into the casino. We get all of our money changed to chips. Go to the roulette table. And I guess, before we went in, we flipped a coin. Heads it was going to be red, tails it was going to be black. So we flipped a coin, it was tails. We had already decided before we even went in, our money was going to go on black. So we get to the table, we have our chips, we put it all on black. And the guy spins the wheel. And it ends up on 00, which is green. Pays out 50-1. There's literally two of them on the 2 green spots on the whole roulette wheel. And it landed on green. And we lost all of our money, and because we had already flipped our coin, green wasn't even an option when we flipped the coin. So we lost our money before we even went in there. But makes for a good story.
But so here's the worst part is they come out and they tell me, yeah, we lost it, right? Because I was under the impression we were gonna lose it right from the get-go. I was like, we're not winning.
Right.
There's no way. And then they come out, and I was like, we didn't win. We lost it all, didn't we? And they were just like, you're not even going to believe this. And I'm like, what happened? They said it landed on 00. And I'm like, so what would the payout have been if we had bet on 00? And I forget what the amount was.
It was like $2,300.
Yeah.
If we had put it all on green or 00, yeah.
So not only did we lose all our money, but if we had made the correct bet, we would have gone home with so much money.
Oh my God.
But the odds of it landing on that are literally 50-1, as opposed to the close to 2-1 odds that you have that it's going to land on black.
Pretty close. Definitely not close enough, but close enough. But pretty close.
Oh man, That would have been an epic story. It's like, yeah, we funded the whole the second EP just off this chance move that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
But I mean, it's worth the story. I've told that story so many times, and like I remember being so pissed off when that happened. But I couldn't be happier that we did it because it's like such a funny story.
I just, I sort of wonder how the guy would have reacted, having found out that the extra money that we worked him for at the show ended up just going to the casino like 20 minutes later.
Yeah, yeah, for real. And we actually multiplied it into so much more money.
We had a lot of good shows, a lot of good stories to go with the shows that we played in Radio Caroline.
For sure, there was some good ones. What was your favorite show with Radio Caroline?
My favorite show that we played, I would have to say Canadian Music Week. When we played at the Horseshoe after Julian Taylor.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun because we set up so quickly just to make sure that, we got some of the people. But we were the last act of the whole thing, and we played at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, we were the last performance of all of Canadian Music Week because Horseshoe Tavern was open later than, I think they were open later than all the other bars pretty much. Or that they had the last scheduled performance, and it was us.
Yeah, maybe it was 4 a.m. It was
4 a.m. last call, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we were the last band at the last show of Canadian Music Week, and it ended up going well. And was that the one we got the tattoos after?
No, we got it the next time we had gone through the Horseshoe because we played with that dummy band that they brought drum shells with like 50-year-old drum skins on them.
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
that?
and we almost got into a fight after the show.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like I wish Liam were here to tell that story because he was the one that like had the ultimate hero moment. But there was this band that rolled up, and we're gonna keep them nameless. I don't think they're even a band anymore, but we'll keep them nameless. But they were the ones that were supposed to bring the drum shell, and I think we were gonna lend out cabs, and it was a whole gear share. And they were late to the load in by like an hour, so no one was able to check because it was drums that we were waiting on. And they roll up with like a Walmart kit with the stock skins on it, just like dimpled to shit. And like Liam starts like hitting these drums for sound check, and he goes, "I'm gonna pop right through all of these drum skins, man. There's no way that I'm gonna be able to make it through an entire set with these. Nor will any other band." Yeah. So one of the other bands had to drive to their jam. This is in Toronto, by the way. Had to drive to their jam space, which could have been like ages away. I remember
it was in the middle of rush hour too.
Yeah, they made it in good time still somehow, but they come back with new skins. We reskin the entire drum set, and we play the show, and all the sets went really well, and we all got our first tattoos. Well, our matching tattoos anyway. Liam had a bunch, and Jeff had one I think before that.
Yeah, it is a little Jesus fish.
Yeah, it's Jesus fish, which is hilarious. But so we played the show. And we're all loading off or whatever, and the guy starts putting the drums in his fucking car. But we're like, hey, man, those aren't your skins. Like this guy drove across town in rush hour to get those skins for you. And he was just like, well, then take them off. And it's like, we reskinned your entire kit for the sake of the show. Are you kidding me right now? Right? And then, so we're in the back of the venue, like behind the venue, and this band starts like name calling us. Like for trying to get these skins back to one of the other bands who realistically saved the entire night.
They really did, yeah.
Oh, 100%. I wish I remembered who they were, the name of the band.
That was Eclecticus that lent the skins.
Yes. Okay. Well, shout out to them because they saved that whole night, and that was a great show. I had a great time that night. But so that happens. Liam has to strip all the skins off of this kit, and I remember him throwing the drum across the stage and being like, here's your drums back, right?
I've never seen him that angry, yeah.
The guy, oh man, same with Jeff. I remember Jeff literally looking me right in the eyes with like, I could see like the cartoon bulls in his eyes, he like Looney Tunes style. And he just goes like, are we seriously going to have to fight these motherfuckers? And I'm like, whoa, relax. We're going to get thrown out of this place. And the dude picks up the drums, and I remember like I'm there with Liam trying to make sure he doesn't get too out of control. And the guy picks up the drums and goes, thanks, man. Hopefully we could play again sometime. And I just remember Liam saying, yeah, fucking you wish, man. Like, incredible. Because, like, I couldn't believe it. And I haven't seen someone load up a car faster in my life. Those guys tossed those drums in that car and were gone within, like, 2 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Unbelievable.
The worst display of unprofessionalism I've ever seen.
Yeah. Don't be that guy in a gear share, everyone. Oh, my God.
But, I mean, there was also the one show we did without you that we did with Evelyn in Montreal.
Yeah.
And
that was funny for me, too, because you guys were doing this whole joke the whole time where you had, like, an old debit card of mine. Because I lent you the van. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's still up on the Radio Caroline page if you guys want to take a look at it. It's pretty funny. I had like an old debit card. I lost it, got a new one, and it was sitting in my van somewhere the whole time. And you guys had the van all weekend.
Yeah.
And so they kept posting up these photos with like my debit card. Like they're covering the numbers on it. They're just like, dinner's on Craig tonight, and they're stopping by like a liquor store, and they're just like, oh, we're getting all the fanciest brews thanks to Craig. Right? So all these jokes are coming out, right? And then the next day, like I think it was the day after the show, it was like Craig's car got impounded, right? And I'm like, ha ha ha, really funny, guys. But they actually got my fucking van impounded.
Dude, it was the worst because we ended up crashing at we ended up crashing at one of Liam's friends' places. And we kept saying, we parked in a parking spot, backed it right up to the wall, and we said, hey man, are we good to park here? And he's like, oh yeah, it's totally cool. I told my landlord that you guys were going to be here, so he knows that you're parking in the parking lot. You guys are all good. So I mean, we brought in some of our stuff. Like, we brought in the guitars and some of our heads, but all of our pedals and our cabs and the shells were still in the van. And then the next morning we wake up and Jeff goes out for a smoke, and then he comes back in, and I said, so, how's it going? He says, the van's gone. I'm like, no, what? And he says, the van's gone. And I'm like, fuck off. Like, you're fucking with me. I go outside, and sure enough, the van was gone. And it was the worst feeling because, like, first of all, like, we lost your van.
It was my van, and I wasn't even there.
Yeah. And secondly, we lost, like, half of our gear.
Right. All the equipment's still in the van.
And we find Liam's buddy, and we're like, dude, what the fuck? And he says, oh man, I'm sorry, man. I didn't actually talk to him. And we're like, well, fuck, where would he have towed it? And we ended up having to call around to all of these different tow lots, within like a 5-kilometer radius. And we found one. And then we had to walk like a good hour to go get to the lot and then pay $100 to get the van back. But I mean, like, at that point, we were just happy that we located the van and that it wasn't actually stolen.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean,
that would have been a whole nother thing.
I'm thankful that you guys didn't hit me up while it was still missing. I'm glad that you hit me up. Like, I discovered that this whole thing had happened on the Radio Caroline page when you guys were picking up the van. Like, you had located it and everything. But I can't imagine, because I was still working. I was at Honda when I saw the post, and I'm like, this is a joke, right? And then I messaged them. I'm just like, ha ha ha, really funny fuckers. And they were just like, no, seriously, we're picking up your van right now. And I'm like, what? And then I heard the whole story.
And at the end of the day, I feel like it's really a good sort of illustration of the way that the industry works, because we ended up coming out ahead, like, after the show. We ended up having like a good $100 in like excess money. We were like, okay, we're actually going to turn a profit on this trip to Montreal to play one show. Right. And we think we're in the clear and we're enjoying our night after. And yeah, sure enough, the next day we wake up and we have to spend all of that money like getting the van out of impound and then using our own money to pay to get home.
Oh God.
But another crazy thing too is Joe Cassis ended up going to that show because it was right after he moved to Montreal.
Right.
And after we took Liam back to his buddy's place, we drove Joe home to the other end of Montreal. And, Jeff and I ended up getting lost. It took us like 2.5 hours.
Right. It was like one of those, can you give me a lift home? I'm like 15 minutes away.
Yeah,
And it was like
exactly.
15 minutes was like 6 hours away.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a crazy weekend. With Radio Caroline, man, it was very rare that we had a show go off without a hitch. But I mean,
yeah, for sure. There was always a hiccup, but like I'm really thankful for it, for sure.
It made the whole thing a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, it makes for great storytelling.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, while we're on the Wild Tour storytelling, I mean, you're of course now you're in Junko Daydream. I'm doing the Heart Attack Kids thing, all that jazz. Have you had any of those kind of wild train wreck kind of nights with Junko Daydream?
I feel like
that sounds like yes to me. That sigh sounds like a yes.
I don't think we've had anything outrageous happen, but you know, like we've had a lot of really, really crazy shows. Like we played a Halloween show at Turbo House last year, and that was absolutely nuts because like before we even got a chance to play, like the monitors had been knocked down and broken and were like rigged up haphazardly, and the place was filled with people and you couldn't even see their faces.
Wow.
And we just ended up like soaked in beer before we even played, which helped us get into it, you know, a lot faster than we normally would. Cause you know, by the time you even get on stage, you already feel like you're on stage. But I remember the first show we played in Montreal, like back when we first started the band a couple of years ago. It was a horrendous experience just trying to get there because we crammed everybody into my car because we didn't have the van yet and we weren't able to borrow a van from anybody to do this show. So we had just enough space in like my old Beamer that we were able to put the amp heads in the trunk and the breakables and the guitars across people's laps in the back, and we were all set, and the rest we were going to borrow when we got there. And this was like a 30-degree day in the middle of the summer. And we get maybe to Dorchester on the 401. And we hear this sound underneath the car.
God.
And then I look in the rearview mirror and my drive shaft fell off.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
It actually fell off the car. And, you know, a couple days before I had my car in at the shop just getting an oil change. And he's like, hey man, like you're going to need to replace your drive shaft soon. And I'm like, how soon? He's like, pretty soon. I said, well, I'm going to Montreal in 2 days. Like, am I good for that? He says, oh yeah, you're fine. And that's just it's just playing through my head as I'm watching my drive shaft tumble down the 401 in the distance. So
oh my God.
we ended up having to sit on the side of the 401 for another 2 hours, like in the blistering heat with no cloud protection. Just waiting for the CAA to show up to take my car away. And then at that point, we were able to wrangle a van from Jack's sister, but it also didn't have AC. So we get that. And at this point, it's like 2 p.m. We're only in Dorchester, and we need to be there at like 7. And we figured if we gun it, we'll make it. And we did. But when we got there, the bouncer for Crowbar, which is pretty close to where the Canadians play, like so it's like right downtown. He meets us outside and he's like, oh guys, you're gonna have fun tonight. The AC unit just broke. It's like 50 degrees up there. So
no break.
Oh
yeah, no breaks. And it's set up sort of like the Doors, like you have to take all of your gear up 2 flights of stairs.
Nice.
So
holy shit.
it was a day. It was a day. That was probably the most adversity we've had to deal with when playing a show.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's just, you know, the standard, you know, load up your gear, play for no money and go home. But that one, it was like you put a lot of extra work into it to load up your gear and play for no money and then go home.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like you said about the whole casino story, right? Like when it's happening, it's not the greatest, but in retrospect, those are the ones you sort of look back on and have the fondest memories of.
Definitely, for sure. And like the car trouble ones are kind of like in its own element, you know, that kind of deal where like Radio Caroline we had a blowout on the highway when we were driving up to Ottawa.
Yeah.
It's like you have the fear of God stricken into you when that kind of thing happens. I can't imagine a drive shaft falling off. That's insane.
It sucked. It was like a little bit of like extra dirt in the wound as well, because I'm sitting there like driving to Montreal and trying to focus on that, but also having in the back of my mind like I'm never gonna financially recover from this. Like I have to replace my drive shaft now.
I love it. Caleb, you gotta have one atrocious Lost Arts show story that we could wrap up with.
We've been lucky, like knock on wood, in terms of like car troubles and stuff like that. We've been pretty good.
It'll come.
We also like kind of cheated, and when we did that Montreal run last year, we like rented a car to do it because I wasn't gonna take my Nissan, like my 11-year-old Nissan. I was like, I'm not loading that up and fucking driving it to Montreal.
Right.
And then nobody else has a car, so we rented one. So like that sense, it's been good. What was kind of like, this is just a dumb Nick story, is the first date on that we went to Toronto, and Nick was like, hey, I have family in Toronto. I have like a cousin. We can probably stay there. And I was like, all right, man. I was like, that's in your hands. You set that up. I'm going to totally trust you to just set that up. And he was like, all right. And he did. He was like, no problem. We can stay in my cousin's apartment. It's all good. And we're like, okay, cool. And we're pulling up. We were going to drop some like bags off and stuff before we play the show. And we're pulling up, and Nick goes, oh, yeah, I actually don't know like where we're going to park, though. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like overnight, I don't know where we park. And I was like, we can't park here. And it was like literally like a basement apartment, like on a major road. And he's like, no. Like, why wouldn't you think of that? Like, we could have got like a permit or something. And he's like, I just didn't think about it. And we're like, well, why not, man? He's like, I don't drive. And we're like, well, you knew we were bringing a car. You didn't think about like where we would put it for the night. So after the show, we had to like drive around like Toronto and find a fucking parking lot where we could park at night, and then walk. Like, I think we ended up walking like, it was like a 30-minute walk or something from the parking lot we found to the apartment at night. But I don't know. Like, we've played a few shows where it's like, the one I always tell is we played the Hideout to like literally 2 people and the bartender, and then we load out, and I come back in because it was a guarantee. So I come back in to get paid, and the bar is like full of people like 20 minutes after we played.
Oh
no.
God, I've had that for
sweet.
sure.
Yeah, those ones suck. But like, I don't know if we've played enough really to have like these horrible experiences. Like, and like I said, we've been lucky with cars, thankfully. We haven't had to worry too much, because like if that happened to me, like all I would be thinking about is like, I'm fucked. Like, what am I gonna do for a vehicle now? And I would not be able to enjoy myself that
Your
entire
day will
trip.
come. Your day will come.
Yeah,
It happens to everyone, man. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
it is one of those things like when you play to nobody, and it's like I remember after that Hideout show, Hayden was like, well, I guess this is just one of those shows where it's like we can laugh about this later. Because at the time, it's just like really disheartening, where you're like, wow, there was nobody there, and it's really hard to like muster up the energy and stuff to, like basically treat it like it's not a practice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is one of those things where it does feel like you have like a badge now on like your rock and roll vest or whatever that you can talk about. Like, all right, that's part of paying our dues, I guess. We played a show in Toronto to nobody. Like, that's a check mark.
Right.
No, absolutely, man. And it always seems to be the shows that you have to travel the furthest for that are the most inconvenient to arrange and to get to that end up being those type of no-shows. For
sure. Yeah. Actually, I guess like though we played the first show we tried to book in Oshawa was like a total clusterfuck. I don't even know if I've ever told this on the podcast, but basically I set it up, and then some band got added to the bill, and who like they were signed and like the shit. And even though at the time we had like the same amount of monthly listeners and shit as they did.
Right.
And so I remember being like, I asked them if we asked like way in advance if they would backline, because they were like on a tour or whatever. And they're like, yeah, for sure. And then we were getting ready to leave. And I think I double checked that we were still good to like use their bass cab or whatever. And they were like, yep. And then all of a sudden they had like an issue with like what the door cost was and like all this shit, which wasn't like, that was what the venue told me it was, right? Mm-hmm. And they were like, I think it was like $5 at the door kind of thing. and they're like, it should have been at least 15 and like all this shit. And then he was like, you have to guarantee us $250 or like we're not doing the show. And I was like, I'm not even the booker, dude. Like I'm just another band on the show. And he was just like, this is totally unprofessional. We're signed, blah blah blah. And I was just like, all right, buddy. And then we ended up just like not doing that show because then we were playing with another London band, and they're like, we're not gonna go. Like, okay, cool. I guess we're just like not doing the fucking
like some
show
Office
then.
Space shit. Like,
yeah.
Where you just are dropping out of the build? No, we're just not gonna go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like that one was very stressful because I was like, what the? And it was like some of the first shows we'd played out of town. And so I was on this whole thing where I was like, well, great. Now we're fucked. Like now nobody's ever going to want to play with us again, which it's ultimately not that big of a deal. But
right.
I always think about that band and I check up on them sometimes just to see how they're doing. And it still doesn't matter that they're signed. So fuck those. I won't say their name, but fuck those guys.
The whole,
I thought it was funny.
The whole idea of being signed, there's not a lot of weight that comes with it anymore, I don't think. I mean, there's so many independent labels. We know that with Radio Caroline, like anyone can say that they're signed if someone wants to put their name on releasing your record.
100%.
Yeah. I feel like it's used a lot out of context in today's like modern sort of scene because so many people are signed to these DIY tape labels.
Yeah, for real. It doesn't hold any weight at all, for sure. And I mean, when being in a band now, or like having dealt with the record label kind of thing before, like if you can do it yourself, just do it yourself. That's the best way to do it. I mean, Wolfpack is the best example for that. Like they everything's independent for them, and they're flourishing because of it. I just feel like sometimes it would get in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have the means to, do promotion and stuff, even, you can work with a publisher or whatever. If you have those kind of connects, you don't necessarily need a label behind you.
Mm-hmm. And booking managers for sure. I mean, like, those are necessary tools. But I mean, the label, a lot of times it's exactly what it's a label. It's just one thing that you can kind of say, yeah, this is what we associate with. But I mean, does it always help? Not really. It's like when I've seen this before with people on Facebook saying, like, hey, my band's looking for a manager. And it's like, why do you need a manager? Like, what is it that you don't think you're able to accomplish yourself?
Exactly.
And a lot of times it's just, it's just establishing connections or something like that. But I mean, it's like, you don't need some other person to get in on there, to get this done. You can do it yourself for sure.
Yeah, it's just all about how much you want to really grind it out.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think it's way more rewarding when you do it yourself.
It is because, at the end of the day, you're sending out 100 emails that you only hear back to one or two of them. It feels a lot better when you were the one that put the effort into sending out those emails.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. How do you guys do you guys delegate a lot within the band, or did like you and Jack kind of handle a lot of the like emailing out and stuff like that? Like, how do you kind of tackle that sort of thing?
We do try to delegate a lot of it. I mean, like Jack handles all of our merch. I handle most of the booking. And then we all sort of share the email workload in terms of, trying to get the EP out to the right people and following up on shows and organizing gear chats and all that.
Right.
I mean, we've been teaching Alex a lot of like what we do and how we do it and why we do it the way that we do, and he's been helping out with us a lot there. So it's a pretty even workload, which is nice because it is a lot. If one person in the band ends up doing everything, then it's gonna create issues. So it's pretty well balanced, and we've sort of worked to try and make that the case so that everyone's pulling their weight where they can. And Doug handles all of our socials, so
right.
If everyone has their job, it makes the whole process a lot less daunting when it comes to like booking shows or booking runs.
Definitely.
Right.
But I mean, what about you guys? Like, how do you guys handle it?
That was like when we had that kind of like meeting in January, that was the thing where I was like, we gotta everybody's got to start pulling like their weight more. And like the one thing that they said was like, well, you booked all the time, so like, you know, we don't want to step on toes, which that's definitely a fair point in terms of like, should everybody be handling all the emails?
Right.
But another thing was like, a thing that I always will do with Gear Chat, like I'll maybe add them to a group, but every time I'm like, I just need to bring a microphone and I'm bringing it. So I don't really care what the gear share is. You guys can, you know, you sort that out, because I'm just another person that has to go through to tell you to bring your head or not bring your head. Like, you can sort that out, you know. But we started getting like, in terms of promo, and like when we were putting out all those promo videos before Weightless, we released Weightless, and that was like, we got together, you know, at Carrie's and put our heads together, and like that sort of stuff. Like, promo work is definitely just us fucking around and then being like, actually, that might be funny. We should maybe film that and see if people like it, you know. But yeah, this year was supposed to sort of be the test for booking and promoting and stuff, and obviously, as we already talked about, like, that's been put on hold right now.
Yeah, definitely.
But what I did notice was at the start of the year with this new single, everybody was more involved, and the overall morale of the band was better, and excitement for sort of what was next was definitely more uniform throughout all of us. Where, you know, like we're like you were just saying, it feels good when you send the email and 100 people don't respond, but that one guy does. It's like when you finally break through, it's like, oh, that feels good that I was able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that everybody was starting to kind of be like, oh, this actually does feel nice that I'm a part of this project, not just at band practice, but for the outside work as well.
100%. And you understand everything that your bandmates are dealing with a bit more when you are delegating the responsibilities of the group, you know, like you have a lot more sympathy, or you don't have any frustration with anyone else because they're still feeling their frustration from whatever they're dealing with, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, it is frustrating when somebody doesn't answer your email or whatever. And you're like, yeah, exactly. It is stressful. And that's why, if something goes wrong with the show, you're like, fuck, man, like I put in all this work for months and then this thing fell through last minute. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, definitely. The delegation's super important. But there's the thing is, I've played in like several groups now, and usually there's that collaborative, or sorry, that delegation where, you know, there's one guy that does the booking of the shows and one guy does the graphic design and the merch or whatever and that kind of thing. But it's so brutal when you'll kind of delegate all those things, but then you'll, like, the merch will come in and someone will be bitching about the merch. It's like, dude, like, if you have a beef with the merch, then like you gotta, like, you want to do this for me instead, you know? Like, it's so brutal. Or like you book a show and it doesn't go off well. It's just like, well, I mean, I booked the show. I mean, like, at least we played, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the only struggle that you get when you delegate all those jobs.
Well, we set it out when we sat down and had our 12-month plan. You know, like, if you aren't actively involved in doing something, you don't have a right to complain. We just set that out right off the bat.
Right.
You know, it's like, if you have input, give the input before it happens, because otherwise, you know, everyone's got their jobs and some things are out of your control.
Yeah. Otherwise, you miss the boat.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely the way to go about it.
Yeah.
We should probably start wrapping up. It's been just over an hour here.
Right.
But we do normally ask there, Scott, if you got any, like, an album recommendation or something for the people. I know there's probably been lots of time to listen to music the past month.
Well, I've been really, really getting into a band called Moontooth.
Okay.
And I can't think of the name of any of their albums, but if you look up Moontooth on Spotify, it's pretty amazing. It's like a cross between Protest the Hero and Every Time I Die, if it was fronted by the guy from Incubus.
Oh, okay.
Shit.
Wow, nice.
So, I mean, that's really interesting. I've been really getting into Pine Grove. I mean, I've been listening to them for years, but I've really been getting into their live session they did with Audio Tree. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. I mean, otherwise, I've just been listening to a lot of podcasts.
Nice.
What about you? What about you guys? What have you been listening to?
I haven't been listening to anything that
You go ahead,
new.
Caleb.
I need some recommendations as well.
You go ahead, Craig. I got to think about what I've been listening to.
I was gonna say this is gonna sound so douchey, but I actually listened to the Radio Caroline EP again recently, because I was making a playlist of all London bands for people to check out, and I wanted to include a Radio Caroline song, because I mean we did that reunion thing a few months back, and I mean we probably will again. Likely.
If anyone watching this is interested, I've got 200 copies of that EP at home. If
Yeah,
anyone
there's actually
needs
no
one.
shortage. I posted up a photo because I found one in the wrapping, and I was like $800 or best offer. But I knew damn well that you have like cases on cases of the album.
I definitely want one. I don't have a hard copy, so I definitely
Yeah, there's
would like
$60 a pop, everyone.
one. Yeah. Fuck.
But I re-listened to that EP because it's fantastic. I mean, like your guitar work, Jeff's bass work, and we actually a lot of people don't know this, but Mike McRae is the one that played drums on that album, and he does a great job too. And Simon did a fantastic job mixing it. So, every time I listen to it, it's definitely like the creme de la creme of albums that I've made, I'd say.
It's great.
I love
awesome.
that EP. When you shared it, back in the fall, I actually listened to it for the first time in a good year or so. And I was like, fuck, this stuff holds up.
It holds up really well. I listened to it again just because I was going through a bunch of stuff, and I definitely wound up listening to it like twice. I was like, this sounds great. This still holds up really well. And I mean, as for our older recordings, you can't say the same thing about like the production and everything, right? It's like dated almost, right? And I mean, we were all
hugely,
like, I was a kid when we were making them, right? So I mean, there's just things about it that you look back and you're like, oh, well, I could have done this better, or this could have been done a little differently. But I mean, with the Take It All EP, I listened to it and I'm like, this is great. Like this would still get an approval from me.
That's the one where
So
we
that's
sort of
my
found our
recommendation.
groove, and we weren't, recording all of our guitar parts through DS1s and playing with a kit that hadn't been reskinned in like 2 years. And
Yeah.
that
Well,
was
the big
one.
difference was that we switched to baritone and 5-string instruments.
Yeah.
Right, and that just it added such a huge dynamic to it.
Oh, it did. It holds up. I really think
Yeah.
fondly of that EP.
Yeah, that's my recommendation. Go listen to the Radio Caroline EP. 'Cause
Go
we have
listen to
Scott on
our
here.
old stuff.
Yeah. It's not a total douchey self-promoting thing. We got our guest Scotty here too, so it's double the self-promotion.
It's topical. It's topical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, but I haven't thrown this band out here in any of these episodes yet, so I would say Dead Poet Society would be my
Oh
recommendation.
hell
for this
yeah!
week. I think they
Right
rip.
on.
I think they're like a really solid, like modern kind of rock band. They
Yeah,
like,
dude.
yeah, man. I don't know. I've been really into them. So yeah, that would be my thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, so this will be out after the new Junko Daydream EP is out. So go listen to that. I'm excited to hear some new stuff.
Should be available
Yeah, is there
on-
anything else that you need to promote there, Scott, before we hang her up?
Yeah, we Make an Idol of Our Fear on May 1st. It's available on all of the streaming platforms that you could possibly think of. And should have a couple videos out by now. And yeah, let us know what you think.
Okay.
It's really heavy. If you're into heavy stuff, you're going to like it.
Right on. Thanks again, Scott, for doing this. We'll hit stop on the recording and we can say goodbye separately.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Of course, man. Yeah. Right on. See everybody next time.